Welcome, everyone. We are back, and in this season, we are talking to people who are in recruiting and talent acquisition positions. And my guest today is Jordan Hallow, and I'm so excited that he could be here because we got connected, I think last year,
Mhm.
2020, middle of the
Holy crap.
pandemic. And we both came out of higher education, and he's made the pivot into recruiting. And so when I knew I do a season on recruiting, I wanted to have him come in and share his perspective, not only from where he's at now, but also because he's had the experience in career development to be able to see both sides of the process. So, Jordan, thank you so much for being here and being a guest.
Thank you for letting me come on. I've been looking forward to this for a very long time.
Yes, yes. Okay, let's jump right in. I want you to share with the audience, like, what are you doing right now? Like, what kind of company are you recruiting
Mhm.
for? Like, what's your deal in recruiting?
Yeah. So I am the director of selection and recruitment for Northwestern Mutual. That is a very fancy title to say that I'm a recruiter. And I have three different territories or three different offices that I oversee the recruiting for. So I do all of our interviewing and oversee kind of the onboarding process for our financial advisors full time, and then also our financial advisors that are interns as well. So I kind of kickstart that process and work with one of our financial advisors here. He's kind of like our college unit director. Wears a couple of different hats, and so him and I work in tandem to kind of oversee that process. And yeah, look at resumes, talk to people all day, and yeah, just get to know people and see if this is a career that's a great opportunity and a great fit for them.
Awesome. Great. Okay. We're going to keep rolling with the
Let's do
questions,
it.
all right?
I'm ready.
So, tell me what the hiring cycle looks like for your
Oh
organization.
yeah, that's a great question. I actually just saw a post that somebody had on LinkedIn about, is your Q4 hiring faster than it normally is? Is it slower than it normally is? Is it about the same? What's it looking like right now? And for us, it's picked up in Q4. And so when I looked at the poll, it was about 63% of people were saying that things had kind of picked up in Q4. In the later part of Q2 and then the early part of Q3, is actually kind of stagnant a little bit. It was a little not slow, but definitely the pace now is a lot different. And I'm always interested and fascinating to know why that is. Because to be honest with you, I have no idea why. Maybe people are looking to start off the new year, new me, whatever it is. But yeah, I would say for us, it's I mean, my interview, I have four scheduled for tomorrow alone, five actually, and I usually have about two
Wow.
scheduled. So it's definitely picking up. And on the college side too, you've got people who are either graduating now or are graduating in the spring, looking for internships or full-time work. So that stuff is really ramped up there as well.
Yeah. Resignation. That's been a really big topic of conversation in the career world and in the
Yeah.
recruiting world. Do you think that that has something to do with this uptick that you're seeing? Because I know back in the day when I worked with recruiters, December used to be a little bit more of a lull, or like, well,
Yeah.
we're coming into December close enough, but this time of year, Q4, used to be a little bit more lull in the hiring, and then it would
Uh-huh.
kind of ramp back up in the spring. But it sounds like that's not what's happening this year. Do you think it's because of the Great
Yeah.
Resignation?
I would say there's probably some part to that where we have as financial advisors, a lot of the people that we actually end up hiring and come on board, they don't have the finance background. There's a lot that
Mm.
goes into that. We train them, of course, with all of that. Um, and so I think a lot of people, as I'm sure you've seen too, is that now that the workplace as we know has changed, right? We were just talking before we started here about how we were both working from home, and I came into an office because I wanted to get out of my spare bedroom.
Right.
Um, I think that whether we like it or not, a lot of the things that have happened with the pandemic are here to stay. And one of the
Mhm.
things I think with that is that a lot of people have seen that this is now an opportunity for me to kind of take a risk or to kind of look at a different career opportunity, maybe because the one with the Great Resignation, a lot of people realize that there's some work-life balances that are in question. Do people, does my supervisor, do they trust me enough to where I'm at home? Do they trust that I'm going to get my stuff done? I've talked to people who said, my supervisor expects like a daily report or like a weekly report of what I'm doing, so that they can make sure that I'm still working. And that just kind of threw me off. I was just kind of like, like, tell me more. Like, I want to know more about that.
Right.
I just think that people are seeing that maybe their career isn't as fulfilling as it hoped, or we've seen a lot of people get furloughed during the pandemic, which
Right.
is really unfortunate. And so a lot of people are either taking a gamble on themselves, or they're saying, hey, maybe I'm just another number. Maybe I don't mean as much to this organization as I think I do. And so maybe this is a good time to really pivot and make a transition. Who knows? And take a gamble on myself and see what plays out. So I would say for us, especially what the people that I have that come in, they are career changers through and through. A lot of them do have the kind of the finance background, but some of them, I mean, I just hired somebody that was an athletic director. And I was shocked just at how good he is. I just truly floored. Somebody that was a part-time groomer for pets.
Wow.
So now's the time that people are kind of saying, well, I better now than never, kind of take a
Right.
gamble on myself, go out there and see what I can do.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. You really hit it on the head because that's what I'm hearing too from clients and people who seek me out. It's I'm ready for something different. It's like everybody woke
Hmm.
up.
Yeah.
The pandemic really just woke people up to go, I don't want to do this anymore. I know
Yeah.
that I want something more or I want to get out of this situation. And so, yeah, I mean, hey, great for you all, it's changing the recruiting cycle a little bit, which I think
Yeah.
is exciting. Keeps everybody busy.
Yeah, and I think to your point, like work-life balance is always something that will always come into not question, but it'll be a topic whenever we're talking about a career transition or looking at a new opportunity. People who are in their fields for 10 or 15 years, that's still a question that they have is what is my work-life balance like?
Right.
And when the pandemic came, a lot of people were kind of questioning, hey, yeah, I'm working from home, but they're probably working more hours, or again the trust issue with a supervisor or somebody that's part of a team. Maybe they have different hours that they found that they like to work more. I saw another poll where somebody said, when you're working from home, what do you prefer to work? And most people said there's like a core hour, like a core time frame of like 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. where everybody kind of puts the meetings in and stuff like that. But then outside of that, it's like, well, I like to work at night, or I like to work really early in the morning. That's certainly thrown a lot into the mix as well. So,
Yeah, yeah, I think flexibility is like the main
mhm.
thing that I'm seeing across LinkedIn, talking to clients. It's like we want the
Yeah,
flexibility to work when it's best for us.
yep.
So that's definitely confirming a lot for me. So let's jump into really some specifics around recruiting for your organization. So one of the things that we hear thrown around a lot is ATS, which is short for application tracking system. As I like to call it, it is the black hole that all the applications go to die.
Yes,
And I think there are
yes.
a lot of job seekers out there who feel that way. And I would love to know, like, what system are you using? Like, what is it looking for? How do you guys have your ATS set up so that a job seeker knows kind of what they need to focus on when they're applying?
That is a terrific question. I'll be honest with you, we actually don't use one. Um, and I love it. I know that some people, right? Some people have, they love applicant tracking systems. You're going to get very juxtaposing, different sides of the coin. People are going to be they love it or they hate it. For some people, it's an opportunity for them to weed people out, and others, it's like, hey, you know what? They think it's like you have to prove something. Like one person said, you have to prove that you can pass like the robot eye in order to get to the human eye.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not totally for that. I can see that perspective. But for me, like, I firmly believe that every application that I get deserves the recognition and respect of me going through it myself. Um, and seeing what I can offer. Because the other thing is that a resume or an application doesn't always tell you the whole story.
Right.
And so one of the people that we just recently hired worked for a molding company, Moulding, like actually like a molding factory of some kind. And then I found out through talking to him that it's a family organization. Her husband is the CEO. They have 60 people. It's really growing. Um, and their goal in life is to be their own boss and have their own financial advising firm. I didn't learn that through their resume. I learned that through talking to them.
Right.
So
Right.
I think that there are definitely you definitely need to have a resume that is catered, of course, to the job description and what I'm looking for. And I can certainly talk about that. But I also think one of the things that I've learned here is I've always been a really big stickler for resumes, and I think there is a fine line in that. But also that for me, I think that everybody kind of deserves, if they're going to put the effort into applying for the position that I have open, the least that I can do is make an effort on my end to give them either appropriate feedback or just give them the time that I think that they deserve.
Yeah. Audience out there, this is rare. So
It
don't
is, it is rare.
don't think that this is going to happen at every
Right,
position. It's more likely to happen, I think, at smaller organizations, family
right.
run organizations that can't afford ATS systems. But oh my gosh, my career coach heart loves to hear that, because I think that it's so hard for applicants out there when they see that it's ATS system, and it's like, ugh, is it even going to get to somebody? And so to know
Right.
that there are still organizations and people who are reading everything and seeing everything, I think that that brings a lot of hope,
Mhm.
honestly. Like, and it sounds like your organization is really looking for a good fit. And so they want to explore that with each candidate, which I think is really wonderful.
100%. 100%.
Okay, well, let's jump into the resume tips, because I know resumes are such a huge topic. And for me,
Mm.
it's actually the thing I do not focus on in my coaching, because I feel like it's very secondary to other things that people need to
Yes.
figure out. Having said that, it's still part of the application process. And so,
Mhm.
what are kind of your top maybe 3 resume tips that you have for applicants based on what you've been seeing come in?
Mhm. What I always, and I'm a stickler about this stuff because I do my own resume consulting on the side, and I work with people all the time on their resumes. And one thing that I always see is I like to call it the laundry list of your job description. Like, you're essentially telling me you're writing verbatim what your job description was, and it looks like a laundry list or like a
Yep.
grocery list. Um, that's not what I'm looking for. I can typically, with the exception of some roles, I can kind of get a based on your title, I can probably guess a little bit of what you're doing. What I really want to see is how you've kind of gone above and beyond in your current role or in your previous roles. I want to see more than just the job description. I want to see accomplishment statements, achievements. I want to see outcomes. I want to see those highlighted statements that will tell me more about you as an individual, that you're able to save the company time, money, different resources. That's something that I really like seeing, because when I see that you've done that at previous roles, it gives me a pretty good indication that I'm hoping that you're going to do that at the role that I'm trying to hire you for, or that you're currently applying for. So I think that that is absolutely critical. I love seeing that. And that's really one way to differentiate yourself, because as you have seen and as I have seen, we see all the time just the job description just kind of like vomited back
Right.
onto the resume. It was copy and pasted from their
Yep.
the job description that they were given when they were hired, or whenever they Googled it on whatever. I'd say that's number one.
Hold on,
Number
hold on.
two,
I
yeah,
have to
go for it.
add. I have to add, because this is the piece of advice that I used to give to people all the time when I was doing resume writing. If it sounds like the person next to you can do the same thing,
Oh
it's
yeah,
not specific enough.
Yeah.
It's not specific
Oh,
enough.
that's really good.
Yeah.
That's really good.
You
Yeah.
can use that. You can take it.
Like, I'll just let me write that down real quick.
Okay. Tip number two.
Tip number two, I would say that don't like cram it all in. I don't want to see like lengthy paragraphs. I don't want to see where somebody has like decreased the margins and like literally done everything they can to fit all of this information onto a resume. It's like information overload, and like my brain is going to explode. So I don't like to see like I know there's some people will do like paragraphs, or the spacing is just really off. Things start to like kind of uh, like jump into lines at the same time. Like it's just like too crammed, and it's like too much for my head and too much for my brain. So like I like seeing things formatted, evenly spaced. I like when somebody's able to kind of summarize things pretty quickly, because I think there's an
Mhm.
art to that. Um, Instead of just kind of going on and on and on and on. Um, Now, that's not to say write 3 to 5 words and call it a day on your bullet points. Don't
Right.
be doing that, but don't have like 4 or 5 different lines for one bullet point. Because then usually what that indicates is to your point about the applicant tracking systems, is that people are trying to cram in those keywords, because that's often what ATS is looking for, are those keywords. So they're trying to fill it in with those filler keywords and buzzwords.
Mhm.
Um, Now, I think there is a distinction between buzzwords and keywords, which I think
Sure.
is important, but don't just try to cram and jam everything in there. Make it succinct, make it short, sweet, but to the point. I think that's really important.
Good. All right, last one, number 3. What do you got?
Last one, whew, I would say be careful with how much years of experience you put on your resume.
Mm.
Um, and I think that some people the reality of the hiring world, we don't like to think of everybody as um, things doing things that might be not really good practice, right?
Mhm.
But there's ageism that exists,
Right.
and so also, but I think that there is some relevancy in only leaving on like the first or the within the last 10 years, maybe 15. If you're
Okay.
applying for like a senior level position, or like a vice president or executive level role. But I wouldn't push it anything past 15 years in that regard.
Mhm.
And for others, maybe 10 at most, I think is perfectly acceptable. I wouldn't want to go anything beyond that. So I don't want to see anything on there from the 1990s, because I have seen that before. It was really good
Woo!
experience, but I think that there is a tendency for people to be like, okay, well, that person's from the 90s. If that's at least 30 years of work experience, they might be overqualified for the role I'm trying to
Right.
fill.
Right.
Um, or they're well into their 50s and may be retiring soon. And then that ageism comes into play, where they're not
Right.
going to hire somebody that's of that age. So I think that that is protective of you.
Mhm.
But I also think that, sticking your most relevant stuff on there is really important. And not to say that your stuff from 20 years ago isn't relevant as much anymore, but I think the world as we know, that work that we do has really changed, and how we do it has changed. So
Right.
I think that the most recent stuff is the most relevant kind of stuff.
Yeah, great tip. Oh my gosh, I love that tip for our more experienced applicants. I think that's really killer. And I think along with, you were talking about relevancy, really look at what are you putting on there? Like there are certain positions that it's like they don't need to know.
Yeah.
If you're at a
Right.
certain point in your career, you can take off some of those early positions where you were trying to figure yourself out, versus the ones that maybe in the last 5 or 6 years were the most
Yeah.
relevant, that's fine to do. And I think people forget that it's a marketing document for them,
Yeah, exactly. I don't need to know that you were a waitress for Texas Roadhouse, while you were in high school.
Right. Okay, now you mentioned you have like 5 interviews tomorrow. So
I do,
you're
yeah.
you're interviewing a lot of people, and I know interviewing is such an art, not only as an interviewer and being able to interview well, but somebody who is being interviewed, there's a lot of pressure and stress
Mhm.
to get to that point. What are some of your tips for applicants as they're going into the interview process, specifically with a recruiter? Because that process tends to look a little
Mhm.
bit different than a hiring manager.
That is such a great point. You are so right. I would say a huge tip is I my goal is to always make it a conversation because I have been interviewed before. I was interviewed when I got into this role, three different at 3 different levels, and so it is very nerve wracking. I always think of what's the line from Eminem? Knee sweaty, um, palms are sweaty, knees weak, arms are heavy. Mom
I,
spaghetti.
I feel like we just dated ourselves a little bit.
We did. We should not be putting that on our resumes. um,
That's hey, you know what? There's a group of people that are going to get that and they're going to
they're gonna love
appreciate
that.
it,
Yes,
and I'm here for it. So,
yes. But I would say that I understand. We've all been interviewed before. My goal is just to make it a conversation, and I want you to be as comfortable as you possibly can, because I know if you're comfortable, you're going to be more relaxed and willing to share information. So just go into it with the mindset of like, I'm not going to be grilling you. It's not like like the cliche. You're sitting at the police station and they've got the light shining down on you and you're in the chair and they're saying, where were you at 4 o'clock in the morning? It's not anything like that to that extreme. That doesn't mean that interviews aren't serious, because of course they are. You should be professional and carry yourself as such. But my favorite interviews are the ones where I lose track of time because I'm just enjoying so much having a conversation with this person. Um, and so don't be afraid to, I love, those are my favorite ones. So remember that, it's make it conversational and understand that, you know, we don't expect you to know everything and anything about the position. If somebody is coming in here and they know they are 100% qualified, they probably shouldn't be interviewing for it. They should be interviewing for the position above that. So I don't expect you to have everything. I don't expect you to know it all. So just come in, have that conversation, and show me that you're willing to learn. Go through, you have your examples ready. I always use STAR method: situation, task, action, and result, as you're
Yes.
going through those behavioral based questions. Um, so I think making a conversation is really important for me. And ultimately, also, come in with the expectation that we don't expect you to know everything. It's
Mhm.
okay. We're willing to train you and work with you. So don't let that be something that keeps your guard up or keeps you really nervous or kind of has you like tracing through your mind that, oh, like I don't know everything. So I'm like, I'm super nervous and I hope they don't find out that I don't know everything. We don't expect you to.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think something you said that was very profound and will likely be a clip that I pull from this is, if you are 100% qualified for the position, you should be applying to it, you should be applying to the next position up.
Yeah.
And I really hope that people hear that, because that is a message that I push a lot,
Hmm.
that you can't look at a job description and expect to be 100%, because if you are, then there's nothing there for you.
Right.
And so I love hearing that from the recruiter side, that even as a recruiter, for some of you that keep applying to positions that you're 100% qualified for, that might be why you're not getting it, because
Right.
what are they going to do
There's
with
no room for
you?
growth. Right.
There's no room for growth, and you're likely going to top out the salary scale as
Yeah.
well. And so that's when you need to push yourself to go to that next level. So I
Yeah.
hope that y'all who are listening to this heard what Jordan said, because I think that is such a
Yeah.
key in the hiring process that people don't really think about.
And you're going to burn out because there's nothing new for you to learn.
Right.
So it's, there, and like I learned, when I came to this, I don't think I was anywhere near 100% qualified. And I think there's a beauty in that. And that I have learned a lot in the time that I have been here. And I am certainly a better recruiter now than I was when I first started here, for sure. And I think that there was a learning curve for me for that. And there still is a learning curve.
Yeah,
So, and that's what I love about what I do. Many things I love about it. So,
that's so great. Any other interview tips that you have
mm,
based on what you've seen?
I would say that there, especially in virtual interviews, I think that your nonverbals say more than your verbals say. What you're doing with your hands, or you- not having eye contact, things like that. I think that often says more than what you're actually saying. I think there's some. I'm sure there's some study or research out there. I don't know the exact percentage, but you do more conversation through your nonverbals than what you actually say. So
Right, right.
be very mindful of your nonverbals. Smile. As weird as that sounds, you can actually tell when somebody smiles. You can tell like the inflection or the change in their tone and voice.
Yes.
Um, and smiles are contagious. Like, so like I think that that's kind of like a lost, not like a lost art, but I think far too often we get just like so serious, and we think of interviews and we've got to be as up straight and as professional as possible. And I like when people smile and show that personality a little bit, because I want to get to know them. I as a people that I hire on my team, if I'm spending 8 hours a day with them, I want to get to know their personality, because I want to like them too. Like, these are people that I'm going to be spending a third of my days with. I
Right.
want to make sure that I enjoy it, and I get to know that through their personality.
Well, and the reality is, if you got to the interview stage, you're already qualified for the
Yes.
position.
Yes.
So you don't have to worry about the qualification piece of it. It
Yes.
really is that getting to
Hmm.
know you piece. So I hope that that brings people some peace of mind there as well once they
Yes.
get to the interview. So,
100%.
yeah, so great. All right. I have to ask the tough questions. Do we care about cover letters anymore? He's laughing because he
Uh,
knows. He knows what I'm talking about.
this is so coming from the career practitioner background that both Julie and I have come from. We have always been taught to tell people like there's a real strength in cover letters, and the statistic that 85% of people don't submit cover letters, or if it's not required, 85% of people are not going to submit them. Do I love them? Yes, I do. I do. I do. I do. I do. I do. Um, do I think that they're necessary? No, I don't.
I
But I love them.
appreciate your honesty.
I do actually really like them, because I just I think there's a couple of advantages for cover letters. Um, every single person that has submitted a cover letter for my position has gotten interviewed. Every single one. Um, and I love seeing that passion come through. I love them talking about what they've accomplished in their careers. It's not a regurgitation of their resume. It shows me their writing skills. It shows me that, like, if somebody makes grammatical errors on their cover letter, that tells me that, like, okay, if they're not going to take the time to check their work here, am I positive that they're going to check their work whenever they come in here? Or is this the kind of work that I expect them to submit if they're in the position? So there's pros and cons to it, but I'm a feelsy, empathetic. I love learning about people, which is why I'm a recruiter. I'm a very fuzzy kind of person, if I want to call it that. And so I love learning about people, and that just gives me more of an opportunity to learn about you and why you're so passionate about the position that we have and the opportunities that we have within our company. So I do love reading them. And I love that it kind of shows that people go above and beyond, and whenever they do research,
Mm,
or they mention in their cover letter that they were referred by a certain someone. um, Especially in larger companies, that's kind of something that might happen. So I think that there is value into them, but I certainly understand that not a lot of people are going to read them. I think that is a reality of recruiting, especially if you're work, if you're at a place that gets a lot of applications like Google, Facebook, and places like that, cover letters more than likely, honestly, are probably not going to be read.
Right.
But at a place like you were saying earlier, the smaller places, yeah, I'm going to read them. Absolutely.
Right.
And will I make decisions on if I bring in somebody, if I don't like their resume, but I like their cover letter? Am I going to interview them? Probably. Yeah. So I just have a soft spot for them. I do love them very much, but I know that there is a lot of hiring managers and recruiters that would say um, it's like wearing a belt. It's like wearing a watch for a belt. It's a waste of time.
Okay, I love your perspective though, and I think this is really important because I know that I have other guests who are going to say the complete opposite
Yes.
to you,
Hmm.
and I love that because what the audience knows now and whoever listens to this is if they are applying with you for your company, that cover letter is likely going to be the thing that gets them an interview.
Hmm.
And I think that that's the kind of detail that people need to listen to when they're doing their research, when they're trying to figure all these things out. You know, people ask me all the time, should I submit a cover letter? I really don't want to write one. And I'm like, well, what is the expectation? Does it say to submit one? Is it optional?
Right.
Like, you have to kind of do a little bit of sleuthing to figure out who are you applying with? Does it matter? So now
Hmm.
people know if they're applying directly to you, that cover letter is going to make a difference, right? But the big distinction, and you said it really early on, was it's not a regurgitation of the
Hmm.
resume, and it's a story and it's a connection and it's passion. And I think that's the piece that has been lost over the
Yeah.
years of what the cover letter is actually supposed to do. So I so
Yeah.
appreciate your perspective there.
Yeah. And I will always remember this cover letter that somebody submitted that didn't have a whole lot of finance experience, had actually been in a completely different career field. But one of the things that they put on their cover letter with financial advisors is, as many of you all know who are listening, helping with financial plans and investments and insurance opportunities, things like that. Um, Somebody put in their cover letter that, one of the reasons, clearly I'm pivoting from a completely different field, but one of the things that really drew me to financial advising is growing up, my family wasn't in the most financially secure position. We really struggled growing up. And, if I can help other families not be in that position so that they don't have to go through what I went through as growing up, I'm all about that. And like, even just like saying that now gives me chills. I
Yeah.
loved that. It was just like such a personal connection to what I am looking to fill. And that's something that I wasn't going to get on a resume. Now, I would hope that I would have gotten that in an interview. Maybe not, maybe. But the fact that I got it early on, I was like, that just like sent shivers up my spine. I loved it. It was such a connection to exactly what I'm looking for.
Yeah. Oh, I love that you shared that because that's what it is. That's what it needs to
Hmm.
be. And I should say, too, not everybody's going to have that personal connection
Right.
to a position, to a company. But if the company and the position don't align with your values, then I would even question why are you
Right.
applying for that position,
Hmm.
right? And that's part of like making that connection for yourself when you're
Yeah.
looking at different positions. And I know I spout about values all the time. There has to be some alignment there because that's also a motivation
Yes.
for you, not only in the interview, but when you get into the position, you have to know why you want to be there. So
Mhm.
I so
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll say is that one of the things with cover letters is that when you're writing the cover letter, don't phrase or don't write as if how the company is going to benefit you. Don't talk about how
Yes.
this is going to help you in your career and do all these different things for you. What I want you to do is talk about in your cover letter how you bring value to the organization and not how we're going to bring value to you. Okay. So, and maybe that sounds a little tricky, but I think that you need to phrase it in a way that wants me to like, I'm going to be like, I need to get this person in right now because they clearly offer something that's going to bring more value to our company and value to our organization. And that's what they're focused on versus talking about me, and how this is going to benefit me and help me in my career. No, I want you to talk about how you're going to benefit us.
Yeah. Oh, yes. So good. Such good advice. Such good advice. Thank you so much. Okay, couple more questions. What is something that you think job seekers should be doing but aren't doing?
Start building your network and start building a like a referral culture within yourself, um, and start building that network before you need it. And so what I mean by that is usually people don't start to network or start getting referrals into places until they lost their job
Yep.
or until they have realized this is the breaking point. I don't want to come in here anymore. I don't want to do this work anymore. I need to get out. And they have started to network at that current point. What I always suggest is that's a reactive response, not a proactive response.
Right.
A proactive response is somebody who starts 6 months to a year out and just for the sole purpose of networking and just going out there and discovering what people do, what their organizations do, setting up informational interviews, all of that stuff. And then something were to happen where they decide to make a career change, or God forbid that they get fired or furloughed or let go, whatever the case may be, and it was unexpected. And now they have something to lean back on, and that these now that they've met all these people, they've had all these conversations, they've had all these different informational interviews, and now it feels much easier for that person to become a referral versus somebody who just lost their job. And I get messages all the time on LinkedIn, Julia, I'm sure you have or still do that. Hey, I'm so and so. Can you help me with like an internship opportunity or full time opportunities, things like that? I've never met this person before.
Mm-hmm.
They just immediately sent me a connection request on LinkedIn, and then they're writing in something to me, and I don't even know who they are.
Right.
So I can't. I would love to get to know that person and kind of build up that referral and build up that relationship, but it's very different from somebody who started 6 months to a year out, who I already know, and already know, like, and trust,
Mm-hmm.
and know that they would be able to do the career that I'm looking to hire somebody for. Now I know them as a person. And so I think that person is going to win out every single time over the person who just sends out a cold email or a cold message to me. That hasn't kind of started building up that network. So I think you should always be open to new opportunities, regardless of how happy you are in your career. I think that that's really critical. So always keep yourself open to new opportunities and always continuously build your network. Always, 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 because you never know when that network is going to come. You're going to need to rely on that network,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. Oh, such great advice. Such great advice. And I think for recruiters, like people have to remember, like you guys get inundated with messages and connection requests and all of that. And so either you're not going to get to them or you're not going to put any time into it. And so one of the strategies that I try to share with people is look, follow them. If you can't
Mhm.
connect with them, because it's still their own personal network as well. So they're not going to connect with everybody all the time, but follow them. And I know Jordan posts a lot of really great content on LinkedIn. So follow Jordan, comment on this content that he is posting about so that he sees you and is exposed to you, right? And then that's how you start to build a little bit more of a rapport versus some of these cold messages that you get from people. It really lacks the strategy for them to be successful long term. And I think that's one of the things people need to remember.
I didn't pay her to say that either, though I might slip her $100 check in the mail as a token of appreciation.
Well, and I mean, look at this, right? Like we connected sometime last year,
Hmm.
just because we both had been in higher ed together, and now
Hmm.
I'm like, oh, Jordan, no, you have to be on the podcast. Like, yes, and that's
Yep.
because that's a relationship that we've continued through LinkedIn because we comment and message and all that type of stuff. And I've never met you in person. This is all just been
Like we
online.
live on opposite sides of the country.
Right, right. And I think that's the thing. Like, you can build those quality relationships when you understand how, like, that connection and the benefit, and you can help the other person understand that as well. But doing that early on is always going to be more helpful for you. So
Yeah.
yeah, so great. All right. Any other last thoughts or tips for job seekers out there?
I would say like open to new opportunities. I know I mentioned that one. I can't stress enough how important that is. Because the worst thing that can come out of it is it's no, it's not the right fit, or maybe no, it's not the right time. Um, but I think it's always worth exploring that kind of stuff. And I would also say that, you know, when I got started I started using LinkedIn almost every single day whenever COVID officially kind of took over our worlds and that we were virtual. And at that time, I had like 300 connections, and I grew to like 2,000 in a year, which I've seen people make much more leaps, much more significant leaps and bounds than I have, because they put more content out. I started doing like once a week or a couple times a week, and then I started focusing more on my business that I was able to grow through being more active on LinkedIn. And so I wasn't posting as much, but I grew followers like crazy. And that was even before I became a recruiter. And so I was just a content creator, if you want to call it that, on LinkedIn. And that has paid off so much dividends for my business, but also I've gotten to meet some truly incredible people. That being involved on LinkedIn would not have provided that opportunity for me. So I would say investigate and look at all those different platforms. And you want to make sure that you're doing what nobody else is doing,
Mm.
because like, for what I always say is that when we're looking at what people typically do for whenever they're applying for a job, they're doing that, right? They're sending out a resume and a cover letter and hoping that I'm going to grab onto it and call them for an interview.
Mhm.
The reality is that the referral culture for us runs very strong. Um, and that extends into every person that I hire. I'm going to look at referrals over candidates that I'm learning from a piece of paper every single time. So that referral culture is huge. So do more coffee dates with people, virtual coffees,
Mhm.
do more informational interviews. If you find that it's not something that you want to do, that's okay. That's the point of learning the information in the informational interview.
Right, right.
And so you like, um, I've always been told like the marketing rule of seven. On average, it
Mhm.
takes 7 interactions with a product in order for somebody to remember it and purchase it. And I like to extend that to referrals and the arts of getting to know people and networking as well. Do more interactions with people, post stuff on LinkedIn, engage with their content, um, and follow them. Just like Julia was saying before, do what other people are not doing, because not very many people are doing that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
The people that are the people that I remember.
Mhm.
And so that's the way you kind of build up that referral culture, and getting to know people versus sending them a message once and then kind of like those Facebook friends that post every single day and you never like, or you might like it and just kind of keep scrolling. Do much more than that.
Right.
Engage with their content, engage with them, do what other people are not doing, because most people are not taking that kind of effort. But then at the same time, those who are not making that effort are not going to go as far as you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Jordan, thank you so much. This has been so great to hear your perspective. Where can people get in contact with you? What's the best way to reach you?
I have LinkedIn. I have my personal cell phone number on there. I have my email address on there. I get a lot of messages on LinkedIn, such as hashtag recruiting life, as Julia has appropriately pointed out. But I always try to make time for people who have shown that they want to, have taken some time to get to know me, or look through my stuff and then have engaged with my content. I'm always there to help people in any way I can. I'm a helper by nature. I think that's why I'm a recruiter, is part of that regard. But I just love connecting with people. That's my job. what I do is I connect with people on a daily basis. If I could have any kind of job in the world, it would be to interview people, interview like Oprah or like all these famous people, because I just love getting to know people.
Yeah.
And you never know where that connection and conversation might lead. Like Julia was huge in helping me transition out of higher education. Um, and like I would have known how to handle it and deal with it, and really put more things into my thought process
Mhm.
if I wouldn't have had her like helping me along the way, and also being like a soundboard and
Yeah.
like reaffirming what I was feeling and thinking and things like that. So um, I think that you wouldn't know that I wouldn't have engaged with her or had that conversation with her if I hadn't taken the time to get to know her, of course, and interact with her content and make that kind of
Mhm.
effort. So
Yeah.
I think Julie and I talked for like an hour and a half, and we were like,
Oh my
oh
gosh.
crap, like we went over on time, but like so I will never I will never say like, oh, like we went over time, like how dare you like shake my fist. I those are the best kind of conversations. So
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I did not pay him to say that either. Okay, so I will have your LinkedIn profile linked in the show notes for this episode. And here's another trick for those listening. If you connect with Jordan, if you message him and you learned about him from this podcast, make that connection for him, because
mhm,
he will probably say, hey, I heard you on Julia's podcast. Like, oh, okay, that's somebody that I want to
mhm,
have a conversation with. And I think those little pieces that you as the listener might not think matter really do matter to us. Make that connection so
yeah,
that we know that it's worth our time to connect with you. So,
yep, bingo.
yeah. Thank you so much again, Jordan. I'm
Thank
just so
you.
happy that you were able to be here and answer all these questions and share your knowledge with our audience.
Anytime. I love it. Love it all.